My dear chosen one, I know you've been carrying the weight of confusion and betrayal deep in your soul. You welcomed this connection with open arms, believing it was sent by the heavens to walk beside you, to help you rise higher, to nurture your mission. But somewhere along the path, the harmony broke. What once felt sacred started to feel like chains. And tonight, I want to speak directly to the part of you that's still asking, how could someone who claimed to love my light be the one to try to dim it? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will open your eyes and free your spirit. There was a soul agreement, or so you believed, an unspoken bond woven between your hearts that felt divine. But what happens when that bond is secretly used against you? When it becomes the very tool that keeps you small, silent, apologetic for your strength? My dear one, the moment you stepped fully into your boss mode, unapologetically embracing your truth, your power, your calling, the mask of that agreement began to slip, and the one who once called you a blessing could no longer stand the fire of your authenticity. This is where the real story begins. Today, we will expose the hidden forces that used that agreement as a trap. We will explore how your rising triggered what was secretly waiting to keep you bound. And most of all, you will understand why the breaking of that bond was not your failure, but your liberation. If this already speaks to your heart, let your voice be heard. Write in the comments, "I see beyond the veil." And if this message finds you today, leave your like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss what your soul is ready to reclaim. Let's begin. You have felt the subtle shift, the moment when what once seemed like a safe harbor began to show cracks. At first, there were little signs, easy to dismiss, a glance that lingered too long, a word that didn't quite match the warmth, a hesitation behind the smile. But your spirit, always attuned to deeper currents, sensed the unease beneath the surface. It was as if an unseen current was pulling against the flow, a quiet resistance growing stronger with every step you took toward your true power. These were not mere coincidences, but the first whispers of a deeper betrayal. What you once believed was a sacred agreement was, in fact, a doorway for control, disguised as care. The bond that promised growth and mutual respect turned into a subtle cage, where guilt was wielded like a weapon and your worth questioned behind closed doors. Your light became too intense, too unyielding for her to bear. And when you embraced your boss mode, your fierce, unshakable self, her inability to accept that truth pushed her to break what held you both. The question that lingers is, was the agreement ever truly hers to honor, or just a tool she manipulated to keep you confined? You might have asked yourself, how can love turn into something that suffocates? The painful answer is that not all connections are what they appear to be. Some are veiled lessons, disguised as relationships, designed to test your boundaries and awaken your discernment. The forces at work here are subtle but potent, weaving guilt and confusion to blur the lines between love and control. But the breaking of this agreement is not a mark of failure. It is the soul's declaration of independence, a necessary rupture so that you can reclaim your sovereignty and walk forward unbound. Let's go deeper now, into the heart of what really happened beneath the surface of that connection. In the beginning, it truly felt like destiny, didn't it? As if the universe had aligned two paths meant to journey together. But hidden in the shadows of that bond was a silent expectation that you would keep yourself small, that you would tame your light to avoid outshining what she could not face within herself. What felt like partnership was slowly revealed as a subtle demand. Dim yourself, so I can feel comfortable beside you. Guard it, and the moment you refused to shrink, the moment you chose your truth, the cracks in that illusion widened. You started noticing the shift when your voice grew stronger, when your presence filled the room without apology. Suddenly, words of encouragement turned to critiques disguised as concern. Where there was once admiration, now there was tension. The forces that hid behind that soul agreement couldn't stand your rise. And what's more, those forces began to use her as a vessel, to project their resistance onto you, to try to make you question the very power that was setting you free. The love that once felt safe became a mirror reflecting back what she was unwilling to heal. And yet, through this storm, your soul was waking up. The guilt that tried to take root in your heart no longer found fertile ground. Your intuition grew sharper. You saw beyond the words, beyond the gestures, into the truth that had been there all along. This agreement wasn't built on mutual growth. It was built on keeping you in a place that served the comfort of another, not the calling of your soul. And so, as painful as it was, you began to step out of the web that had tried to hold you. The more you embraced your boss mode, the more you refused to bend to expectations that were not yours, the clearer the hidden agenda became. You saw how the so-called agreement was used as a chain, not to lift you, but to limit you. And with each act of self-honor, you broke another link. The battle was not against her directly, but against the invisible hands that tried to keep you tethered through her. And that, dear soul, is where true liberation begins, in seeing what was hidden and daring to walk away from what no longer serves. Still, there were moments you doubted yourself, moments when the weight of breaking free felt heavier than staying bound. After all, weren't you taught that loyalty meant enduring, that love meant sacrifice? But what they never told you is that loyalty to another at the cost of your soul is not love, it's bondage. And you, dear one, were never created to live in chains, no matter how beautiful those chains were made to appear. Your rising stirred discomfort, not because you did anything wrong, but because it exposed what was false. Where there was once harmony, now there was friction, not from your truth, but from the refusal of the other to face theirs. The violation of the soul agreement happened the moment she chose control over connection, silence over honesty, resistance over growth. And in that moment, the illusion shattered, leaving you face to face with a painful, liberating truth. You were never meant to stay in a bond that asked you to betray yourself. And so the tension reached its peak. You stood at the threshold, knowing that to keep the peace, you'd have to abandon yourself, and knowing, too, that to choose yourself meant letting go of the agreement that no longer served your becoming. This is the sacred tension of the awakened soul, the choice between comfort and truth, between illusion and freedom. And in that moment, you chose truth. You chose freedom. And as the dust settled from that choice, clarity began to flood in. You saw what you hadn't dared to see before, that this agreement was never designed to support your full becoming. It was an agreement with conditions, with silent demands that you stay small, quiet, easy to manage. The bond had been twisted into a contract that served everything but your highest good. And in breaking free, you weren't just ending a relationship, you were ending a cycle of spiritual captivity that had repeated through lifetimes. This was bigger than the two of you. This was a battle for your soul's sovereignty. The hidden forces that worked through that agreement fought hard to keep you entangled. They whispered lies into your mind, trying to convince you that stepping into your boss mode was selfish, that claiming your power meant you lacked love. But those were the final tricks of the invisible enemy, desperate to keep you from seeing that your strength was never the threat. It was the cure. The moment you stopped bending, the game was over. The agreement crumbled because it was built on the sand of illusion, not the rock of truth. And, oh, the relief that began to rise in you when the fog cleared. There was grief, yes, grief for what you hoped the connection could be, grief for the dream of walking side by side in mutual respect. But underneath that grief was something stronger, the first taste of freedom, the first breath of air untainted by hidden agendas. You realized that true love would never ask you to shrink, and in that realization, you felt the chains fall one by one. This is where the light broke through, when you understood that God never blesses what asks you to betray yourself. The breaking of the agreement wasn't a loss. It was the fulfillment of a higher covenant, the one you made with the divine, to honor your truth above all else. And from that place of clarity, you began to reclaim the energy that had been siphoned from you. What was once used against you now became fuel for your rising. In this moment, you started to see the pattern. How many times in your life you had made yourself small to keep the peace, to be loved, to avoid conflict. And now, standing in your boss mode, you saw that the peace you tried to protect was never real. It was a fragile illusion, held together by your willingness to sacrifice yourself. And when you withdrew that sacrifice, the illusion collapsed. This was not the destruction of something sacred. It was the unveiling of something false. Every step you took toward your power revealed more of what had been hidden. The mask fell. The control disguised as love was exposed. And though it hurt, you felt the deep knowing. This is what liberation feels like. It's not always joyful at first. Sometimes, freedom begins with tears, with letting go of what you wanted so badly to believe. But with every release, your soul soared higher, stronger, wiser. And so you stepped into a new chapter, not as someone who lost a connection, but as someone who reclaimed themselves. The chains were gone. The false agreement lay in ruins. And before you stretched a path lit by the truth, you refused to abandon. This was the reward for your courage, the chance to walk forward unbound, to build bonds that honor who you truly are. Now, with the weight of that false agreement lifted, your vision became clearer than ever. You began to reflect on what true soul connections are meant to do. They're meant to nurture, to inspire, to challenge you in love, never to imprison you in fear or guilt. And as you stood in this clarity, you realized how often the enemy of your soul hides behind the mask of love, twisting something sacred into a tool of control. This awakening didn't just set you free from that one bond. It awakened your discernment for every connection that would come after. You started to see how the guilt that had been planted in your heart wasn't yours to carry. It had been handed to you like a chain, link by link, with every subtle demand that you quiet your voice, dim your light, make yourself smaller so another could feel bigger. But you broke that chain, and in doing so, you taught your soul the most powerful lesson, that no agreement, no bond, no promise is worth the cost of your truth. That is what makes you unbreakable. That is what makes your boss mode sacred. And as the days passed, what once felt like loss began to feel like liberation. The emptiness left behind by that broken agreement was not a void. It was sacred space. Space where the divine could now plant new seeds, where your soul could finally breathe. The grief softened into gratitude. Gratitude for the lesson. Gratitude for the strength you discovered within. Gratitude for the unseen hand of God that allowed what was false to fall away. You began to recognize how that so-called agreement had been draining your life force, siphoning your energy to sustain a connection that no longer served your growth. And now, with your spirit free, you felt that energy returning to you. Piece by piece, your power was restored. Your light shone brighter. Your path became clearer. And you knew in your bones that you had made the right choice, the only choice that honored your soul. This was the turning point where the battle became victory, where the enemy's plan turned into God's platform for your rising. What was meant to keep you bound became the very thing that broke your chains. And as you looked back, you could see how every moment of confusion, every tear shed in the night had been part of your preparation. Preparation for this, the moment you claimed your spiritual throne and stepped fully into your boss mode. Now, when you look at that broken agreement, you no longer see failure, you see freedom. You see wisdom gained through fire. You see the strength that only comes from walking through the storm and coming out on the other side, unshaken and unashamed. The chains are gone. The illusion is gone. And what remains is the unbreakable bond between you and your truth. And as you stand tall in that truth, you become a light for others still trapped in false agreements. Your journey becomes a map for those seeking the courage to choose themselves. And in that, you fulfill a higher purpose, not just to free yourself, but to inspire freedom in others. This is the true power of your boss mode. This is why the enemy tried so hard to keep you small, because they knew what would happen if you ever remembered who you are. And so, as the light of truth continues to illuminate your path, you realize something deeper still, that this was never about the other person. It was never truly about her breaking the agreement. The real battle was always within, between the part of you that longed to be accepted at any cost and the part of you that refused to betray your own soul to earn that acceptance. In choosing your boss mode, you chose the part of you that God always intended to reign. And that choice has changed everything. You begin to see with new eyes. Where before you saw loss, now you see divine alignment. What fell away was not torn from you. It was released because it no longer belonged to the frequency you've risen to. The chains didn't break by accident. The agreement wasn't violated by chance. It all happened as part of a greater plan to call you higher, to separate what was sent to drain you from what is meant to nourish you. And as you stand in that understanding, the pain softens, replaced by the peace of knowing you are exactly where you are meant to be. This is the season where you reclaim what was taken. Every ounce of energy that was siphoned from you under the disguise of love is now returning, stronger and purer. You are gathering back your light, your focus, your voice, your vision. The false agreement no longer has a hold on you. The cords have been severed, and what remains is your sacred commitment to yourself and to the divine, the only true agreement that can never be broken. You start to notice how your discernment sharpens. The patterns you once missed are now clear as day. The tactics of control that once ensnared you no longer have power. You see through the masks, through the words, through the illusions, and in that clarity, you become untouchable by the schemes that once sought to dim your light. The strength you gained in this battle becomes the armor for every battle to come. But now, you fight from victory, not for it. The restoration begins not just within, but around you. As you walk in your boss mode, you attract connections that honor your truth. People who see your light and do not fear it, but celebrate it. Bonds built not on control or conditions, but on mutual respect, authenticity, and growth. The false agreements made way for the real ones. The soul alliances that lift you, that align with your mission, that remind you who you are when you forget. And now, you no longer look back with regret. You look back with wisdom. You see how every tear watered the seeds of your awakening. You see how every trial refined you, how every broken chain became a testimony. What was meant to crush you became the soil where your power took root, and you stand taller now, not in pride, but in the humility of one who has walked through fire and emerged refined, not burned. This, dear one, is the true essence of your boss mode. It is not arrogance, not hardness, not domination. It is the quiet, unshakable confidence of a soul that has chosen truth over illusion, freedom over bondage, purpose over people-pleasing. And in that choice, you have not just broken a false agreement, you have stepped into your destiny. And now, the peace that fills your soul is no longer fleeting. It's not the fragile calm that comes from keeping others comfortable. It's the deep, lasting peace that comes from alignment with your own truth. You no longer bend to fit into spaces too small for your spirit. You no longer silence yourself to preserve connections that could not honor your light. You have chosen to rise, and in doing so, you have chosen the path that was always yours to walk. This is what it means to break the false agreement and step fully into your divine assignment. Where once you felt the ache of separation, now you feel the strength of sovereignty. You understand that love, in its highest form, does not demand your silence. It does not require you to shrink. True love stands beside you as you shine, as you lead, as you grow. And anything that asks you to be less than who God created you to be was never love at all. That is the wisdom you carry now, the wisdom that protects your heart, that guides your steps, that ensures you never again fall into the traps disguised as soul agreements. As you continue forward, your journey becomes a beacon for others still trapped in cycles of guilt, confusion, and false loyalty. Your courage to break free lights the way for those who are still struggling to see beyond the veil. And this, dear soul, is one of your greatest gifts. Not just that you rose, but that your rising invites others to do the same. Your boss mode is not just about you. It's about what your freedom unlocks in the hearts of those who witness your strength. Let this be the season where you no longer question your worth, no longer apologize for your power. The false agreements are behind you. The chains are broken. The path ahead is clear. And as you walk it, know that you do so with the full backing of the divine. What was meant to stop you has only fueled your becoming. What was meant to break you has built you. And now you stand unshaken, unbound, unstoppable. If this truth is resonating in your soul right now, I invite you to declare it. Write in the comments, "I break the false agreement," as a sign to yourself, to the universe, and to all who witness your journey. I also have a special request. Take this moment and like the button below, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. We are building a community, and this helps it grow even more. I also want to take a moment to thank each and every soul who supports this mission through Buy Me a Coffee. Your generosity is sacred and deeply felt. My sincere thanks. If you feel motivated to support us too, the link is right there in the first pinned comment below. Now, before you go, there is another video on the screen waiting to take you deeper. Or binge watch the playlist. It will be an incredible journey. Keep feeding your spirit to ascend even higher. Thank you for watching. See you at the next revelation, and may God bless you.